Right. Well, thank you. Then I would like to go back to Dr. Tran and also Huras Sharifov, who can probably also, and please, if I completely destroy your name, then feel free to correct me and say it once for me. Then. But basically, when we talk about, the one thing is policy, the other thing is action. Walk the walk, talk the talk. What are the considerations and strategic options that the government of Vietnam is considering to strengthen the country's financial resilience to climate and disaster risk? Is there anything, Dr. Tang, that you perhaps would like to add to the presentation you gave us earlier? And Usraf Sharifov, perhaps something that we haven't considered yet. But Dr. Tang, if you would start, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Honestly, like Dr. Ching from the MPI presented, the government of Vietnam is very concerned about the, how can I say, to support the farmers, household to cope with the risk. And insurance is one of the policy, and it is a very new policy. As I mentioned, insurance in general is a very, everybody is very familiar with that, but agricultural insurance is still very new. And as I mentioned in my presentation, even we started implemented the agriculture insurance quite a long time, but at the moment the agriculture insurance in Vietnam is still very rapidly applied, and very small amount of farmers buying the agriculture insurance. And there's different reasons, as I mentioned, but one of the big is the agriculture insurance is very new. That's why we are trying to improve the legal frameworks, and we are trying to raising awareness of the farmers. So that is the strategy we try to push up the agriculture insurance, because we understand that it's a very good way to sell with a good policy to support the vulnerable people. However, besides the agriculture insurance, the Vietnam also implemented different kinds of the policy to support the farmers. I take one example from private farmers. Like we have one decree to support the farmer if they get lost from the national disaster. Yeah, and for example, if the rice farmer, they got lost, they can get the support in terms of the variety, in terms of the fertilizer and pesticide, so the farmer can, how can I say, replant it can recover it. That is one example. And beside that, the government also have a different kinds of the strategy. Miss Dr. Ching just mentioned about some very important, like climate change adaptation, climate change, how can I say, national climate change adaptation, and also national strategy climate change for support the, how can I say, the household in the coastal area. Like Monica just mentioned about we have over 3,000 kilometer coastal line, so very risky. So I mean that the government of Vietnam implemented in different ways, but Vietnam is one of the top, I think, 5 countries were affected seriously from the climate change. And recently, like we just finished the very, how can I say, the big natural disaster for the center of Vietnam. So I mean that the climate change, like, everything happened very unpredictable. Yeah.
You tell me. Yeah, well, thank you, Dr. Tang. Before I move to Khosrav Sharifov, perhaps you would like to include in your statement there already a question that comes from one of the participants, if you know the answer to that. If not, then I pass it on to someone else after your intervention. The question is from Erin DL. What is the current participation rate for agriculture insurance? He or she would like to know the barriers and incentives to join. Is that a question for you, Khosrav, or shall I pass it on to someone else?
I think it's okay. Now
Oh,
we
Dr.
don't have
Tang is
any,
one. Okay.
we don't have any barrier for that at the moment. Uh, the thing is that the farmers sometimes they don't know where they can buy insurance, and also the demand and the supply is not matching at the moment.
Okay.
Because in the pilot program the government supported like for example like 90% of premium for the poor and the nearly poor, but at the moment the poor and the nearly poor is still supported by the government. However, the normal household, there are a lot of normal household they want to buy insurance, but the supported the premium is only 20%, and that is very limited compared with the national private program. That's why the people they still worry about that. Yeah. So I mean
Okay.
that is one of the how can I say the shortcoming at the moment.
Right. So there's definitely more capacity that is being used right now. Khusrat, over to you. In terms of moving from policy to action, what do you see? What is already on its way, and what are the options, the strategic options that you see in Vietnam that are happening, and maybe those that are missing?
Yeah, thanks, thanks, Monica. And it's fine with my name. I'm actually using. You're getting better as you go along, so it's fine. So I think a couple of points in terms of the strategy and the policy. There is still a lot that needs to be done. As it was mentioned earlier, the NDCs were submitted recently, the revised ones. Even though we think they could have been a little bit ambitious, but it's fine. The next one is as it was mentioned, the National Adaptation Plan, which government has already developed as well, and that is now helping to revise Vietnam's climate change strategy. So that's another opportunity for Vietnam to take stock of everything that has been piloted in the country and also learn from other countries. As was mentioned by previous presenters, Vietnam has been trying the insurance for climate and disaster risks for quite a number of decades. So there is a lot to learn from Vietnam, in fact, and those can actually be now integrated into the new strategies that Vietnam is developing on climate change, which is for a longer term. And then, as we speak, government is trying to finalize its socio-economic development strategy for the next 10 years. And there is a lot of talk about the importance of integrating disaster and climate risk reduction elements in that. Practically speaking, that is very difficult when you go down to provinces. We've actually been meeting the provincial authorities who are saying, we are told to do this, but what does it mean in practice in terms of sectoral strategies that they have to address, in tourism, transport, and so forth. And one other big player, which we need to really mention, is the private sector. In Vietnam, government has been taking a lot of the brunt of the impact of disasters and climate change and sea level rise. But the role of private sector still needs to be defined more clearly. I think what we are finding out based on a study we did this year in 2020 is that the private sector is interested to be involved. Apart from the potential benefit that they see, they have to think about the benefits as well. But they can also bring in the new technology, in and outside of Vietnam, and they're much faster when it comes to introducing new technology compared to obviously government, the existing government systems. But what we're finding out is that the legislation does not allow that. So private sector is engaged in disaster response and recovery, as it usually happens in most other countries. But when it comes to adaptation, risk reduction, preparedness, early warning, that's where we see major gaps for them. And then in terms of insurance, I will be speaking a little bit when I reach my time with the slide. Over.
All right. Thank you so much, Khusraf. And I would like to include now Josh and Karina. I mean, Karina, as the head of public sector business development, well, we just heard there about how the private sector could be certainly more included or should be more engaged Is there anything that the other side could do to give the kind of incentive that is necessary for the private sector to get more engaged in this kind of agriculture, in insurance schemes? Are there any measures, any strategies that you see there, or are these basically two worlds that simply don't come together? And perhaps the same question for Josh from the Asian Development Bank. I mean, how do you bridge this? How do you bring public and private sector together? But Karina, I think it's time for a lady to speak again. So first, over to you.
Thanks. Well, Monica, in fact, AXA is supporting the agriculture insurance program already, along with SISRI and the two local insurers, Bauviet and Baumin. So the private sector is already supporting that really innovative program. I think what could be done more is perhaps leaning more on the private sector in this regard, especially specifically on the agriculture, to leverage more of the technology, to leverage some of the risk modeling expertise that especially the reinsurers have in this domain. And then to maybe, well, AXA specifically, we're trying to go beyond just insurance and trying to look at things like how to assist on risk reduction measures. Can we help to finance drip irrigation? Can we help governments or organizations such as agricultural cooperatives to look at, analyze, as Annette has just described, what are the impacts of climate change going to be? How is this going to impact the different operations and functions? How to not just focus on insurance, but also reduce the risk, make the right efficient investments now, whether it's drip irrigation, whether it's drought resilient seeds, as well as combining that with insurance. And I think this knowledge on both sides can really help to expand what's already been done.
Great, and I could see Dr. Tan nodding, and I do have questions for you. I just would like to bring in Josh and Nguyen later on as well, so that we had once a round with everyone. So Josh, first of all, over to you.
Thanks, Monica. And maybe I can draw a little bit on the work that the Asian Development Bank has been doing as an example of how to bridge that gap between public and private sector. So ADB has been working to develop disaster risk financing tools at both the city and provincial. Out in the video presentation earlier about having these national level strategies, but how does that actually translate into action and activities within the provinces or within the cities? And I think our work as well was well described to some extent by Annette in terms of the data that needs to be collected. So doing an analysis of the hazards, creating an exposure database for the different sectors or the different things that we want to protect. For instance, ADB has supported the city of Hue to create a GIS-based asset register of critical public assets. So this is a process of deeming which are the most critical assets, who owns them, what would be the reconstruction value. And I guess it's these data points that can help some of the activities that were just mentioned, that we need to look at ways that we can reduce the risk exposure, but also these are the pieces of information that help to design a very solid insurance product. And again, not to say that there's a single insurance product that will solve the problem, but a range of options. And I think this is the point where the private sector can come in and bring their expertise in that modeling, but also in the structuring. And ADB, I guess, is supporting the government in looking at the different options that would be available to protect them against climate risks.
All right, Josh, and I would like to stick with the topic of the private sector when I cross over now to Nguyen Ngoc from the GIZ in Vietnam. Now, the Vietnam project is under the tripartite agreement currently being initiated. In that context, what are the perspectives there to engage the private sector in Vietnam's risk finance approach? What do you hear? What do you follow there? So you would just have to activate your microphone, and then we can listen to your views, Nguyen.
Yes, actually, we are working now on the public sectors on these aspects, on many things, the climate change, and later on engaging the risk transfer mechanism, including climate insurance, into the practice. I think we have not yet touched the issues related to private sector, but I think it's quite potential in future. And at the moment, we are preparing the background for that. We are collecting the data related to loss and damage, and we also reviewing all the legal documents related to the available finance mechanisms on risk management, risk transfer, and the finance mechanism. So in future, I think we can have more result on that, but not much so specifically for the private sector. Yes.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you. And I do receive some more questions from our participants. They're usually very special ones for one of our speakers, but seeing that all of us are here together, let's just pretend we're not in a virtual space, but actually on a stage looking at each other. So when I ask one of you a question now that comes from the floor, and one of the others of you would like to also say something, then let's do it the old-fashioned way. And if you do that, then I know that you would like to say something, and I can bring you in. Let's have a go, because the next question that comes from the floor is again from Mr. Tang. You're very much in demand. The question is from Kui Din, and it goes: which agriculture insurance pilot that you can think of is among the most successful, and what are the key success factors? Mr. Tang, that's a question for you, but again, the others can join if you give me this sign. Your microphone is still...
Okay, so can you repeat the question again, Monica?
Sure. So it's a twofold question. First,
Okay.
which agriculture insurance pilot that you can think of is among the most successful?
Okay.
And the second, what are the key success factors? Why that pilot is so successful?
Okay, yeah, very, very interesting question. So I can, in the first question, what is the successful? I think it depends on the insurance company, or it depends on the farmers. Because we did the assessment for pilot, and we saw that for livestock and for rye get successful. But the successful here because it can be continued implemented, and both the farmer and also the insurance company happy. But for the fishery, especially for shrimp, it's terrible because the compensation is very high. That's why the reinsurance company cannot afford it. And also, that when you do the risk assessment and you do the load assessment for the shrimp is very difficult. That's why there are a lot of things we call the moral hazards. I think you know that. So I mean that we can say that if in Vietnam the rye and the livestock is okay, because I think we need to have a clear about the legal framework and also supported documents. And the second question about I think the key successful for the national pilot program in Vietnam is we set up the one of the system for running the insurance from the center to local people, to the local, at least to the communes. Like for example, we have a center steering committee for agriculture insurance. We have a provincial steering committee, and we have a district. And at the commune, we also have one officer who in charge in the insurance. That's why I think after that we see the successful key for that is we raising awareness for all the stakeholders related to the agriculture insurance. So after the national pilot program, and we review that who involved in, they know that okay, they can say that okay, agricultural insurance, what is the benefit, what it is, and if they want to buy it, what they have to pay and what they can get it, and anything. So I mean that is the most successful, the key for the national pioneer program in Vietnam. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I've just seen that the lady who has asked the question has just activated her camera and her microphone, taking the initiative there. So would you like to follow up the answer? Is there anything that is not clear yet? Q Din, if that's the correct name.
I am currently running a small insurance company in Vietnam. We are talking about having.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you. The sound is very bad. There's a
Sorry,
voice-
yeah.
Yeah, that's better. Okay, off you go.
I forgot the mic. So my name is Hui, and I'm currently running a small insurance company in Vietnam. We're in the bottom 10 of the market. We have been talking about having the private sector to play a part in this. My background is in biology and in ecology, so naturally the climate change is one of the topic that I personally feel related to. What I feel is that from what I learned, it would be great to have some visibility about, what pilots the government has run in, and then is there any success? I mean, the government is sponsor for 95% of the expenses. There might be, and is it successful? And how a private company can play a part if we are not a part of that subsidies programs, for example. And that's a big question for the private insurers, who might, think about, okay, how do I get involved in these sectors as well? And I would like to take this chance to go to the next question. So I came from AXA, Karina, and so I'm so happy.
Hold on, but you just asked the question. You just asked the question about how the private sector and yourself, what you're standing for, can get involved. Maybe we should get an answer to that question first. If there's a volunteer, I see lots of faces, but I do not see a hand raised. So who would like to have a go at that? Nobody. Hui. Josh, off you go. Please enlighten us.
Sure, I can give a brief answer, at least some thoughts, and I guess it's a very general answer in some ways. So please add someone if there are more information that's more Vietnamese specific. But I guess there's lots of different ways of looking at it, and I think it's important to recognize that there's probably not a one size fits all solution either, and there are ways that schemes can build on government initiatives or government programs, and there are ways that there are other entry points for insurance companies to look at in this sector. And I think looking at financial inclusion within the country as well is one possibility. What types of other financial products are being offered to the particular target market, knowing that these also support farmers to build their livelihoods. But also, for instance, in what ways can agricultural insurance unlock microfinance lending to the agricultural sector? That could also be a way where you're not only providing risk protection, but also enabling farmers to build their livelihoods through borrowing from MFIs where previously perhaps they weren't able to because of their risk profile. So just a couple of initial thoughts.
Well, brilliant, Josh. And I've seen that Annette would also like to contribute to this. So Annette, over to you.
Thank you, Monica. Just one thought that I had, since you were raising the question how the private sector could actually come in. The InsuResilience Solutions Fund, as mentioned, offers actually co-funding for specific product development. So in case there is an insurance company, for example, that would like to introduce a new and probably also innovative product in agricultural and for the agricultural sector, that's something where you could apply to the InsuResilience Solutions Fund, and maybe then also propose that new product to the government, as you said, which is still a barrier for you maybe to participate in the national program. If you can introduce and offer a new innovative product that would improve maybe also the existing offers in the market, that might help you. Thanks.
Well, thank you. And Hui, you were ready to ask one more question, and I just pretend that this is a classic fishbowl session with a surprise guest joining us. So this is your chance now, Hui, to ask one more question before I have several more also for the panelists. So off you go.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And yes, I would love to hear more about the initiatives that AXA, that Karina just mentioned, that, AXA has started the projects with the government, Swiss Re, that you just mentioned in your talk earlier. I would love to know how the progress come. Partially because I came from AXA before, and AXA parametric is one of the topic that I'm really, really impressed with. So thanks.
So thank you, Hui. And Karina, off you go.
Well, to be honest, I mean, it's exactly the National Agriculture Program that has been presented in the previous session. So there's nothing new to really discuss, but it's just to say that I think both us and Swiss Re have done a lot. I think it's mainly Swiss Re who's been involved from the start with the Vietnamese government, and we've come on board a little later, trying to support on the development of the underlying product to make sure that it's technically robust, that the pricing is solid and sustainable, and I think also trying to help on any kind of distribution aspects, because I think one of your questions is also about the key success factors of what makes an agricultural program work or not. And I think for me, from what we've seen from other programs that we support across the world, subsidies are very important. Typically even in the developed countries, you've got over 60% subsidies. Typically it's very often mandatory. So the legal framework goes a long way to push that forward. And then thirdly, the distribution networks are incredibly critical. So in India, for instance, this linking it to loans, using that bank distribution, making it mandatory has obviously created a lot of scale. But obviously it's not that any of these programs are perfect, but I think getting those three ingredients right will really help. So we're very happy to support the program going forward.
So just one more thing. I'm sorry for silly question because I came in a little bit late, so I probably missed this.
No, and we didn't. We didn't show the slide earlier, QA. That actually gave us an opportunity, and that also reminds me that a few of our panelists, they also have slides, and I would like to turn to Josh and Khosrav now. If there's anything, because we do have the slides ready now, we could show them. And perhaps you would like to elaborate on issues that I haven't specifically asked you about yet. So perhaps let's start with Josh, and let's take a look at his slides, because Josh, I'm pretty sure that you know what the slide shows. I can't see it just yet. And then we would be, there you are. So Josh, please tell us what are we seeing, and what is the information you wanted to share with us?
Sure. I just seeing my face, but you can see me on video, so that didn't really need to be included. But nonetheless, this was an introduction slide to present myself, but I think that's been done. So perhaps I could talk about the Asia Pacific Climate Finance Fund, which is an ADB managed multi-donor trust fund established in 2017 with the support of the BMZ from Germany. And ACLIF supports the design and implementation of financial risk management instruments. And these instruments aim to increase the climate investments that are going into climate change mitigation, climate change adaptation, but also to improve the resilience to the impacts of climate change. And these particular instruments we're trialing mostly within Asian Development Bank projects to look at the ways that we can really scale up the impact there, but also looking externally as well. So these financial risk management products aim to support new climate technologies, aim to scale up private sector climate financing, promote investment into climate sensitive sectors of the economy, as well as addressing extreme weather events.
Right, well, thank you. Thank you, Josh. And what actually alerted me to the slides, and I'm very glad that we had a chance to do this here, was Khosrav mentioning that he would elaborate more when his slides appear. So Khusrav, I think now is the chance for you. So if you would activate your microphone and to tell us what we see and what you would like to share with us.
Right. I'm not going to go into details, Monica, because a lot of it has been covered already. But also coming back to a question that Hue has asked, the local business owner, which is great to see here. Maybe on the middle column here, where I'm covering a bit about the insurance market and the gaps. She may know already that there is a new government decision. The number is already there, which is on restructuring the stock and insurance market in Vietnam with some really interesting targets. So maybe that will give some ideas where the government at least is going with the insurance business here. And in addition, what I can say is that right now, Ministry of Finance, the insurance supervisory authority within Ministry of Finance, is revising the insurance business law in Vietnam. And I think that is an opportunity for private sector partners, especially the insurance companies in Vietnam and international partners, the industry partners, may actually contribute to that. Probably finding a way through the insurance supervisory authority, who is actually leading this process, to make sure that we cover these, the needs that you see that has to be covered in the new law, which I think has not been revised for almost 20 years. So on the third column there, as a way forward, I have some ideas that I'm proposing as a way forward. This is what we are seeing right now in terms of the regulatory framework in Vietnam. As I said earlier, there are a lot of gaps in the insurance law that needs to be addressed, especially talking about the insurance core principles, which are developed by the International Association of Insurance Supervisors. So some discussion there with Ministry of Finance to see how we can slowly adjust the insurance business law of Vietnam in accordance with these core principles. Obviously, that's going to take, we understand, many years. But that is something that needs to happen. There is a bit of capacity building that needs to be done for the supervisory support for the insurance sector and the market development. And as part of that, we are actually looking into potential conducting a diagnostic of the insurance market to identify specific gaps, focusing on disaster and climate risk insurance. And there is a recommendation to actually establish an insurance training institute in Vietnam, which is also in line with the decision issued by the Prime Minister in the country. We are starting off with a new initiative in Vietnam called Insurance and Risk Finance Facility of UNDP, which is an initiative supported by German government to be implemented in 10 countries globally initially, and Vietnam is one of them, looking into those 5 areas and focusing on inclusive insurance and sovereign risk financing, potentially with private sector partners in Vietnam. So we are looking forward for people like Hue and others from the local insurance company to partner with us to implement this project. But also this is something that is supported by global industry partners such as the AXA Climate. In fact, Karina is part of these discussions. Willis Towers Watson and Guy Carpenter. These are the 3 global industry partners who are part of this initiative right now to see what kind of new products that can be developed for Vietnam. In addition, maybe quickly, there is a GCF supported initiative that we are implementing in Vietnam for a couple of years now, looking into improving data management for disaster and climate. And that is one other major gap that we are seeing, that in order to develop specific insurance products, we need to know what the data is. And as part of the exercise that Adet mentioned, we actually try to also see where there are additional sources of data. That is a major gap. So hopefully with the relevant ministries like MAR, the Ministry of Environment, Vietnam Disaster Management Authority, in the next couple of years, we are hoping to have better data, the risk data, which can then be used to develop more insurance products in agriculture as well as other sectors.
Right.
Over.
Well, thank you. And risk data and the risk analysis that we also heard earlier from Annette, because you say, in a few years from now, I hope those years that we have those years, because certainly the agricultural sector and this huge coastal line. I hope all of this will take several years before it gets worse. And that brings me now to Nguyen one more time. I don't know if you also have a slide, Nguyen Nok, but I'm sure you can tell us a little bit about the role that climate risk insurance can play for infrastructure investments and the resilience of critical infrastructure, for example, along coastal lines. Please share with us what we see in on the slide, anything, and certainly about the role that climate risk insurance can play for infrastructure investments. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Let I come back to that. Come first to the questions, and firstly, let's mention about the infrastructure investment gaps. Development country like Vietnam is now facing a gap for infrastructure investment and a huge annual loss caused by natural disaster and climate change. So each year Vietnam invests up to 20 billion US dollar. It's equal to 9% of GDP, but it doesn't mean only 30% of investment need of the ministries and locality. And at the same time, we are facing an average annual loss up to 1.5% of GDP. So now we come to the question: how is the climate risk, and why do we need resilience of critical infrastructure? We all know that infrastructure are vulnerable to climate change, and Vietnam resilient vitally relies on the protective qualities of coastal and inland water infrastructure. We all know that critical infrastructure, and all the slow onset climate risks lead to additional investment costs, higher costs for maintenance, contingencies, and burden the public budgets. That's why the consideration of climate risk transfer mechanism, including climate risk insurance, together with the adaptation method, would be very essential, especially in the early stage of the investment planning. And in cooperation with between in the collaboration between the CSI of GIS with the ministries in Vietnam such as MPI, MART, and Monterey, and during our ongoing effort to determine the climate risk management for critical infrastructure from the planning stage. While mainstreaming this into the policy framework, we recognize that climate risk insurance is gaining importance and concern by Vietnamese government. And in this risk transfer mechanism, offer many opportunities to improve climate risk management in developing countries. And we know that insurance can shift the mobilizations of the finance resource away from ad hoc post-event payment, where the funding is often unpredictable and delayed, towards more strategic and, in many cases, more efficient approach. So, and set up in advance of the disastrous event. And making the tool available to the critical infrastructure, we know that this protect most vulnerable objects seem to be very attractive, and we believe that's either the way forward in the next decades of Vietnam.
Thank you very much. And I just keep an eye on the clock. We have 10 more minutes. So in these 10 minutes, I would like to pass on one more question from our participants. It doesn't have a specific speaker in mind who should answer it. So it is from Antonis Malagardis, and the question is, are we focusing on long-term initiatives or short and medium-term measures? Who has an idea about that? Then please tell us. So in this discussion right now, perhaps Dr. Tang would be able to enlighten us if he's still with us. I can't see him right now. So in all these risk insurance, in these measures that we have in Vietnam that we heard about, are we talking about long-term initiatives or short-term measures? Dr. Tang, what do you say? Please activate your microphone. Thank you.
I think in Vietnam now, because we just issued the decree 58 for agriculture insurance, and then the government just issued the decision 22 for the policy to support the agriculture insurance. That's why at the moment, in the short term, we need to stimulate it, because if the policy issued by government, and it cannot run, it cannot apply into the real one, so no one have a belief into the policy. That's why at the moment in the government in Vietnam, in the short run also very important, because we just need to implement the policy the government issue already, like follow the decision 22. That is the important thing.
Right.
Yeah, but however, in the long run, we need to build up the, how can I say, the good institutional system for the agriculture insurance in Vietnam. Like for example, we need to, for example, we can have a decree, but we can up to the law, or we have a good, how can I say, for example, like a supportive organization. For example, loss assessment. At the moment, note assessment is still done by some combined between the General Statistics Office and also the province or the district representative office. However, personally for me, it needs to be done by the independent organization. That's why I think in Vietnam now, short run, we need to stimulate the policy from the government, and we need to, how can I say, how can I say, to pull up the participant of the different stakeholders, like insurance company, like Bảo Minh and Bảo Việt. They are already to join, and a lot of the farmers, a lot of the livestock producers, they really want to buy the livestock insurance at the moment, but they don't know how, and they can, kick off how, where they can buy it. So that is the, I think in Vietnam now, the short run is also very important. Sorry,
you're on mute. Yeah, Monica.
And only 1 minute. Can I say 1 minute, Monica? I think I listened to very interesting presentation from the ANET, and also interesting presentation from you guys here, from UNDP and from GIZ. So I think it is really good if we can sit together, we can share more experience. Because even like a model from the ANET, that is very interesting. Honestly, it is the first time I listened. The result I read some in some report, but today I listen from you, and I really need to understand more about that. And also, at the moment we are working with the IFAD, and under the order from the Ministry of Agriculture, they order us and assign to develop we call like a handbook for the farmer for agriculture insurance. That's why under the support from the IFAD, we are build up the some kind of manuals, or the like how can I say, template for farmers. So we are producing, and we expected that we will have a manual for TOT. We have a notebook for the like a question and answer book for the farmer at the end of this year. So after that, we can share with you guys. So thank you very much, and especially thank you for inviting me to join. It's very interesting the workshop. Thank you very much. But I had to leave now. I had to leave now, so I'm really sorry, and I hope we can meet, and on behalf of IFSAT, I'm really to welcome all of you to visit us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. It was good to have you in this session. Thank you so much, Dr. Tang. Thank you. Bye-bye. Everyone else still stay, please. Everyone else still stay, because we still have 4 minutes before I just say my goodbyes. In these 4 minutes, I would like to, because I've seen Annette raising her hand earlier, and Annette, try to fit it into 1 to maximum 2 minutes, please.
Okay, I'll be very short. It was just referring to the question whether if we were looking at short-term measures or long-term actions. Now, I think it's both, right? And we know that we are facing disasters today, and given climate change, we will need to adapt. But in order to give, especially the private sector, but also more long-term public also investments into critical infrastructure to transform the economy, that takes time. But in the meanwhile, we are still facing these disasters, and I think insurance can be a very powerful tool to bridge and actually support that transition in the meantime and account for these risks. So just as a reply. Thanks.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you very much, because this allows me now in the final round, and I would say each and every one of you, if you can basically put it into 1 to 2 sentences, the answer. Obviously, this was a regional learning session, and we've heard a lot about Vietnam's approach. So from this session, from what we talked about, from what we heard, what is the key takeaway for you, and something that we can learn from Vietnam and perhaps use and adapt in other countries of the region? Your key takeaway, meaning very, very brief, and I'm starting with you, Nguyen. If you would like to activate your microphone, Nguyen Ngoc, please.
Could you repeat the question?
Your key takeaway. This is in order to summarize what we've discussed. What is your key takeaway from the strategies, the programs, the projects that we've learned about now and heard about what's happening in Vietnam that could eventually be used in other parts of the region? Your key takeaway. If you want to think about it, I'll have a look at Josh. I'm sure Josh is ready, and you think about it.
Thanks, Monica. I would say that we've seen the size of the problem that we need to tackle, the exposures that exist, whether assets at a national level, city level, for a specific sector like the agricultural sector. And hopefully this session brings an appreciation of why there's so many different efforts trying to tackle it. And I guess my key takeaway would be that we've seen a great example of how the data can be put into place, and it's not only there to create very effective insurance products, but it also creates an ex-ante process for really planning around how to be prepared for the next disaster.
Thank you, Josh. And I'm passing the question on to Karina now.
I think my takeaway is obviously Vietnam has made enormous strides in both the long-term and the short-term practical initiatives, and you can see how much they've done on planning at the kind of high level. And I think doing the implementation on some aspects like the agriculture insurance has been implemented and can be expanded. But I think there's also some gaps still that we're hoping to work with other companies that Khusrav mentioned, and I think the takeaways for other countries in the region is to maybe look at those who don't have agriculture insurance programs in place, to look at what's worked, how they've moved so quickly to get a really strong program on board, and also how Vietnam seems to be working very well with UNDP, with ADB, with lots of different stakeholders, and managing to keep the projects very much aligned and working together. So I think that's not necessarily the case in all countries, and I think that's a good learning for others in the region.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Karina. Nguyen, did you come up with something? I'm sure you did.
Yes, and I think my takeaway is that we recognize the common concerns of different stakeholders in the issues of the climate risk, and we all agree that insurance should be the case, the key solution for futures. However, we still see some, we have already the tool and we are concerning about the data, but we still see some gaps and at the same time, we have a different interest from different partner. So how do we harmonize and how we collaborate with each other in future is something to consider to make sure that we have an insurance, climate insurance for future in practice by tools and also in the policy.
Well, thank you very much. Now the question is, who has the last words, a gentleman or a lady? I would start with Khusrav, who is staring into the camera. Off you go.
Thanks, Monica. I would like to second what Karina mentioned, that Vietnam has decades of experience applying insurance products specifically in the agriculture sector. So I think other countries can learn this from Vietnam experience to not to make the potentially the same mistakes, but actually apply the lessons learned from Vietnam. But moving also a bit further, what Annette mentioned, insurance is not the answer to the problem that we are facing in Vietnam and other countries. We have to look at it from bigger picture, the overall climate and disaster risk financing. One other example that was mentioned by, I think, the first presenter from Ministry of Agriculture is the disaster management fund that the government has established originally at the subnational level. Usually you have this at the national level, and here in Vietnam they actually started it at subnational level in provinces, and now they have one at the national level, which I think is a really good example also for government looking into other disaster financing and climate and disaster financing options, and also looking into potentially engaging other partners. So it's not only public resources that get drawn down every time we face a disaster. Over.
Thank you so much, Annette. You're the last before I close the session.
Okay, I'll be very brief. Actually, I agree with the most of the points already raised, but maybe one more takeaway. I think, given the long experience that Vietnam has, it shows that it takes more than just one partner, right? It's a multi-stakeholder effort, and that means not only on the state level, but also on the provincial and the community level. It needs efforts, especially if you want to come from the policy to implementation. And there, it's also not one size fits all. We see that you have to innovate, you have to try to then also adapt according to the needs to really reach the poor and vulnerable. And Vietnam has really shown that they are very active and very innovative in this way. Thank you.
Thank you. Big thank you to all speakers, the country representatives, and to everyone who participated. The numbers are slowly dropping out, but then again, we're 3 minutes over. We did have some technical issues to start off with, but I think towards the end, it all worked beautifully. So thank you so much for your patience and for your contributions. Of course, this was only session 1 of 4 regional sessions that we will cover today. The next one is coming up in 2 hours from now, when we focus on Africa. Again, another 2 hours later, Latin America and the Caribbean. And last but not least, this evening, the Pacific session. There's also a day tomorrow, of course, very important day impacting lives in the closing session. So hopefully see you then as well. In the meantime, thank you so much for contributing. And yeah, hopefully see you in 2 hours if you're interested in the Africa session. So take care, stay healthy, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.